You've seen the headlines. Freight fraud isn't going anywhere. But if you're a QuickScope customer, you're not seeing it in your business. QuickScope is a cutting-edge, load-level visibility tool that stops fraud before it starts, right where it happens. Inside the transaction, no noise, just results. With unlimited usage and by far the most cost-effective product on the market, QuickScope delivers real value without the bloated price tag or platform confusion. And here's the kicker. Version 2 of QuickScope drops this summer, packed with powerful new features and AI integrations that'll make your visibility game even stronger. Sign up today and you'll be locked in at today's pricing when version 2 goes live. Stop chasing fraud. Start stopping it. Visit quickscope.com. That's QUIKSKOPE and learn more. In freight, time is money and efficiency is key. That's where Levity comes in. Imagine automating your email operations to do more with less effort. Levity connects directly to your inboxes, extracting vital information from emails and attachments in real time. It seamlessly integrates with your TMS, empowering you to quote faster, build loads more efficiently, and book more freight in less time. Whether it's incoming emails from shippers or carriers, Levity's got you covered. It understands any language, any format, and even interprets non-standard formatting. Visit levity.ai today to sign up and get started. Welcome back to the Freight 360 podcast. Ben, we're going to go over some good year-end stuff today. I'm excited for it. We kind of do one of these each year. We'll take a slightly different approach this year. But for everyone listening, make sure you check out all of our other content. Our website and YouTube is filled to the brim full of full-length podcasts. A lot of them have great subject matter experts on various topics, and we've got some great one-on-one stuff for prospecting and operations and how to grow your team, all kinds of good stuff there. And there's blogs. You got the Freight Broker Basics course if you're looking for a full training package for yourself or your team, and do the old share, like, comment, all the things that help the algorithms and the YouTubes get us to more people just like you. What's going on in Florida today, Ben?
Not much, man. Just enjoying the nice winter weather.
You wearing socks? Is it that time of year?
I do have socks on, but mostly just around my house because my floor's cold.
Fair enough. It's funny, I was talking about with my siblings earlier this morning. We're trying to figure out like a good joint Christmas gift for my parents. They live in Fort Pierce. And I started like rattling off all the restaurants they love to go to. And I was like, man, and I look outside and it's just like snow on the ground and snow plow. And it's literally snowing right now. So it just makes me wish I was in some warmer weather. But
I will say this.
We are.
My daughter wasn't feeling well, and my wife a little bit last week. Ava had strep throat, so we watched a lot of movies and didn't get to go do some of the normal activities. But we got our Christmas tree up, and I was sitting there. We were watching, I can't remember what it was, some movie. We were just hanging out, eating, and I'm like looking at my fireplace, and I'm like, I do kind of wish it would have dropped to like 40 or 50 degrees so I could have built a fire while you're sitting next to the Christmas tree, because there's just something about the ambiance around the weather this time of year that just sit next to a fire. Problem is, every time I build a fire, my air conditioning basically kicks on. It's so hot in here.
That's true. I didn't think about that. I have like my office here is in the like front corner of my house, and it's weird. Like in the summertime, the AC doesn't kick enough to this part of the house. So I have a fan that runs, and then in the wintertime, like now, the heat doesn't kick enough over here for like the rest of the house. So I have this gas fireplace back here that I run, and then I have to turn the fan on to like help it circulate. So it's always just trying to make slight adjustments to make it more comfortable in here.
Same thing. My office is in like the farthest corner of my house. So when the air kicks on, the air conditioning in my office is connected to the top floor of my house, but the rest of the first floor is a different air conditioning unit. So basically, to keep my office cold in the summer, I've got to cool the whole top of my house to keep my office cold.
Oh, jeez.
And the air conditioner downstairs, to your point, like doesn't make it into this room. So I put in I have like a huge fan I put into my office to try to do exactly what you're saying. It's like one of those like 5 or 6 foot fans to just keep the air circulating, because otherwise it's just so hot in here in the summer and it's freezing, even when it goes down to like 60 in my office.
Yep. All right. Pittsburgh over Baltimore.
Yeah. Hey,
dude,
we
that
won.
division, man. It's like And you guys play them again in a couple weeks, right? So
I believe so.
yeah, right
Yes.
now I think like it's what's crazy is you look at the AFC this year in the NFL, like just looks very no one just sticks out as like truly dominant. Like obviously the Patriots have a really good record. Denver has a good record, but like you look at like your historically really dominant teams, like your
Well, the Eagles lost over the weekend. I think the Colts also lost their quarterback, I think.
yeah,
Like,
Danny Jones went out injured. But like the Chiefs, like they've got I think are they 6-7 right now? Same thing with Baltimore. The Bills are 9-4. So yeah, just like either wild card or in the hunt for like the teams that were like historically like always going to win their division and whatnot. So, but yeah, Bills had a good win over Cincinnati. Joe Burrow and the Bengals, like another one, like a dominant quarterback, but like
yep.
they always, I feel like it's like an injury thing, and Burrow just has to play like a god because they, just I feel like their defense has let up a lot of points historically. So, but yeah, man, it should be good. This is like the race to the finish line. I love December football. So many good games. You got Bills, Patriots this weekend. That'll be a good one. I saw Philly lost Monday night this week to LA. Jalen Hurts, a lot of turnovers, threw a pick at the end of the game when they could have like kicked the field goal to tie it up and go to overtime, but they were going for the win, and he throws a pick. So that's a tough one for all the Philly fans out there. But yeah, looking forward to let's see what we got this week. Chargers KC, that one could pretty much lock Kansas City out of the playoffs, but I think Kansas City is going to pull that one off. Bills, Patriots, that'll be a good one. LA and Detroit, and then Monday Night Football, Pittsburgh hosting the Miami Dolphins. Okay,
Yeah. It'll be an interesting game.
there you go. Miami's won like 4 straight, so
I know.
yeah, interesting. But anything else going on in sports?
Nah,
You're
not
just talking
really.
about it too. F1's over for the year. If anyone's an F1 fan, Lando Norris got the championship. It's always weird to me, like in F1, when you don't win a race, but you won the championship. Like, so, it's the last race of the year. He needed X amount of points. He beat Verstappen by 2 points, but finished 3rd place in the race when Max finished in 1st. So, yeah, that's racing for you. It's kind of like golf, right? Like point system. So
Yes. Very much so.
all right, what's going on in the news? More shutdowns. I saw a couple more trucking companies bit the dust. I saw a funny thing on Reddit this week where like this whole non-domiciled CDL thing, and a lot of brokers are wanting carriers to send pictures of the drivers at the pickup holding their driver's license, and it was like these 2 dudes that just looked like they were about to go to a party, headband on and whatnot, just smiling, holding up their CDLs as a set of team drivers. Yeah, seems to be kind of the hot topic. Do you see any of the outlooks for 2026 for freight?
Some. I mean, I read them as they come across.
Nothing terribly noteworthy. Like, it didn't seem like it was going to get any worse. But I think today, it's Wednesday, right? The Fed should release their decision on like if we're going to drop another 25 basis points or maybe even 50.
Yeah.
So I think really the whole demand is going to be the biggest driver of any real
for sure
push.
Too. Yeah, I think you need the demand side. We need to be making more things and buying them more. Like, we just need growth in the economy, and it's slowed to very, very low levels. I also
Stock market's doing great, but we feel it in trucking. It's like, man, like rates are compressed, margins are compressed.
And this has also never occurred, is that like the stock market is doing great, except that all of the gains are concentrated within 7 stocks. And I've seen more articles evaluating, instead of the S&P 500, the S&P 493. Because what you see in the other 493 companies is the exact opposite of what you see with the top 7 companies. And all that money is all going into AI, data centers, and power. And all the rest of the companies in the S&P are basically looking abysmal. So
That's
it's
interesting. So what are the seven top ones?
you have, well, Facebook, Meta,
So
the
all the tech,
Magnificent. Yeah,
AI.
they're all the
Okay.
AI companies. And then here's the other interesting thing is the other interesting thing with that is historically the stock market performance was always correlated or tracked in line with the overall economy. So as all the companies do better, stock market goes up and everybody's making more money and doing well. But the opposite is happening because the bulk of the companies in the S&P are not making money, so they're doing worse. The overall economy is doing worse. Everything is getting more expensive, and the 7 companies that are just raising a ton of money for AI are doing very well. But
So here they
everything
are.
else
Ready?
is just,
So you got Alphabet, which is Google,
yep,
Amazon, Apple, Meta, which is Facebook, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla. Those are your
yep.
magnificent seven, as they're being called.
And even if you go back a handful of years, I think it was some crazy amount of time I read like yesterday, but like those 7 companies have their growth percentage was like in 4 digits, and the whole rest of the stock market was in like double digits. Like it's massively spread between those 7 companies and the rest of the entire country, stock market, and I would even argue global economy. But also, we're waiting. I'm very anxious to hear the Supreme Court rule on the tariffs because if they toss those out, you might actually see business pick up again.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember my boss had, so like last December when I was in Nashville for a Christmas party, we were kind of talking and he's like, he's like, I got to warn a lot of you guys. He's like, there seems to be a lot of, enthusiasm and, excitement for the Trump administration coming in because people think it's going to boost the economy. He's like, I'm going to warn you, like, if he comes in and starts to do a lot with tariffs and whatnot, he goes, that could actually brutally hurt our industry. And he was right. So, yeah, didn't really
Yeah.
think about that a year ago, but here we are. So, all right. Anything else in the news?
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's that time of year. It's December, coming up on Christmas. And it's that time when it's a good idea to take a look at everything from your book of business overall, your company, if you're the owner or leadership in it, if you're just a solo broker or on a team, looking at your customers, looking at specific lanes. I wanted to talk through today a lot of that, and also from a higher level, some of the things that are good tactical moves when you're in a leadership position or maybe you're running a division or a team, or maybe you own a company, right? There's all different levels of how to analyze where you're at and what needs to be true for you to get to where you want to be at this time next year, right? And that for just about everybody is to grow and be more profitable, unless your goal is just to get out of the business or retire or sell your company. So um, we'll talk through some of the basic things kind of first with your book of business. And we talk about this every year as far as like doing an annual review, and we've talked about doing like periodic, the hot wash or like the AAR, either monthly, quarterly, biannually. End of the year is a great time to look at metrics, and if you're not tracking your metrics, I'm talking about phone calls, emails, in-person meetings if you do any of those, follow-ups, how many new prospects got added to your pipeline, how many new customers you converted, and then obviously the objective things like revenue, gross profit, all that stuff is really important. So I'm going to pull up on my other screen, and I won't share it, but some of the metrics that I started tracking this year specifically that were new. And I'm curious, Ben, what your thought is on how granular I've started to get here. So for years, I've tracked for our brokers on our team. I have looked at the load count month over month. I've looked at revenue, gross profit, and margin percentage. Those were kind of like the big ones that I've always had, and I put them up on a graph to show trends over time. Is somebody growing? Is somebody shrinking? Is somebody stagnant? Okay. I recently added in, I've got like a dozen metrics that I track now. So I'm looking at, for the month, I look at load count, total miles, revenue, carrier pay, gross profit, margin percentage. And then the reason I added in some of those other metrics is now I'm calculating revenue per load, gross profit per load, revenue per mile, carrier pay per mile, and gross profit per mile, just to kind of see how things have tracked over time. And to give you context, if I go back, let's see here, throughout this year, I can see that we're kind of starting and ending the year in about the same spot as far as like the pay per mile, AR per mile, profit per mile. Where I saw change was the spring and then the tail end of summer, but it's kind of like flattening out towards the end of the year. And I'm curious, do you see any value in getting that granular on like, well, let me preface with this. The reason I'm starting to track that is when I hear people telling me that like, carrier pay, I can obviously see what DAT says for rates, right? And the, nationwide and whatnot. But when I can see that, what is my company paying per mile? And I gave you my like, yeah, we started and ended around the same and had a couple peaks throughout the year. We're still way higher than what DAT is showing. So like we have, what I would say is better paying freight for carriers, which is, I don't know. I had to dig deeper on why that is. Maybe it's some specialty stuff that's kind of weighing in there, but we're not a company that's full of people moving cheap freight, jump ball, lumber loads, steel loads. We've got a lot of different niches and things like that. And I think those are the types of diversified niches in your company that'll help you sustain like these elongated, like rough freight markets, right? Like I think you don't get weeded out as easily if you're more of a reliable and like you're kind of in that specialty or you've got some diversification. So those are some of the metrics that I've started to implement this year. What's some of the stuff that you've historically looked at, whether it's like, a rep that's underneath you or your own book of business or even in prospecting with activity?
If we're just talking like account specific, like I always try to look at like where they're trending and where they were. It depends on how much data you have. So for example, right, like I always try to keep it as simple as possible, right? It's like, okay, what determines how much money you make working with a customer? All right, there's a few things. One, how much business that company actually does, whether you get any of it, none of it, or all of it, right? There's that first variable is like how much business this company does. If they ship basketballs, do they sell more or less basketballs this year than last year, right? This is really important, I think, to at least think about. I don't go super deep in it, but I try to at least understand where is that industry trending. Because if you compare this, say this month versus this month last year, an account you've had for a few years, you want to know, like, are you doing better? But also, is the company doing better? Because maybe the company's just doing less business, right? And we were talking a little bit about this related to the economy, but like, if you did a lot of shipping related to like home building and you did a lot of flatbed stuff and you did even like high service stuff where you had decent margins and really good relationships, they're just building less homes is the first thing, right?
Yeah.
So like you could be doing everything you should be doing and then some, and you might actually even have a bigger percentage of that company's shipping business, and you could be doing everything right, but like they just sell less of what they sell because there's just less people buying it, right? And that's true in literally everything, which is why brokers exist, because no company knows exactly how much products they're going to sell and to who. That's all an RFP is. It's just a guess from any shipper of this is what we think we're going to sell because this is what we sold last year with a few little tweaks, right? So like I always try to keep that kind of in the back of my mind as I'm evaluating, like, are they going up or down? And then the next thing, or the two things you said, is like, I kind of look at our margin as a starting point and go, is the margin going up or down is like the first indicator. Okay. If last year for the fourth quarter for this company, we were doing 14% margins and this year we're doing 9%. Okay, so our profit went down. Then the next thing I kind of look at is like, what is the load volume? Did we do less loads or more loads, right? Because that's going to tell me how much business that company's either willing to give us or how good we are at getting it, right? And I'm like, okay, well, if the volume's gone up, that means we're getting a little more of their business. And then I look at the number you said, which is like, is the bill rate going up or down since last year? And is the carrier pay rate going up or down, right? Because in some scenarios, like you could be making less money because the carriers got more expensive on those lanes, or you lost capacity for whatever reason because these carriers aren't in business, right? And then the other side is your customer paying you about the same, or are they ratcheting their rates down, right? Because to me, that's really telling me like the profitability of each account. And then I kind of look at it like, okay, well, how are we staffing it? And what are their pay terms, right? Just keeping it very simple. How many people does it take to run this account for this customer? And then I try to look at, okay, what are their pay terms? Are they paying 30 days or they're a 60-day payment company where we got to fight with them to get money and it's a big headache, right? Because those are the things that I think I just try to look at and go like account by account. And what the other thing I'll do is like, I'll just take every customer and every sum for the whole year for each company, load volume, total sales, total cost on carriers, what is my margin percentage, right? And I divide it out by like the GP. So like we ran 300 loads with this company, we made this amount of money, you divide those two numbers, that's your average profit for each shipment you moved with them, right?
Yep.
Because the percentage is important as a ballpark, but I also care about the dollars, right? So like if my average GP on a customer is like $45 and another one is 200, the next thing I do, and we talk about this a
like
lot.
What actually hits your paycheck and your commission check, right?
Correct.
It's going to be off of the dollar amount. 100%.
Right. And then when I go back and I look at it, I always, again, this is like back of napkin math. Like it's very simple, but I think it's very useful. I take what are all of the monthly expenses for the brokerage, and then I look at what is the average load volume they did every month all year to just get an average, right? Okay, this company moves 800 loads a month on average, 200 loads a week. There's a little bit up and down, but I take literally the total of 12 months, divide it by 12 and go, this is a ballpark number. Okay, the company spends $40,000 a month for everything. Payroll, software, insurance, tech, real estate, phone systems, everything, every single bill. Divide it by the number of loads they average move every month. And then that gives me a good idea of like, what does it cost the business to move one of those loads this year? Okay, if that number is $85 and I've got accounts where my average GP is half of that, we didn't make any money there.
Yeah.
Like that is not profitable. Now, it doesn't mean you get rid of that customer, but it really gives you a different way to look at it because we're very much in the day-to-day of a business. We're very much in looking at things weekly. And to be honest, like I've gone in businesses where like that profitability number, that $50 margin for like one customer, there are weeks where their other customers didn't move anything. And if they didn't move that freight, they wouldn't have been able to make payroll. So it doesn't necessarily mean you get rid of them, but you got to understand what is valuable to your company, what is giving you the most value, and where are you like really just grabbing pennies, right, in front of a steamroller, hoping something bad doesn't happen. So like those are like, I guess, the very simple things that I kind of just will literally do in a spreadsheet. And I can do most of those in like a half an hour for like a whole brokerage. You just, hey, what are the total loads? Divide those by month. What is your average monthly expense? Divide those two numbers. That's my cost per load.
Yep.
Then I look at each account and I'm like, okay, are they getting better? Are they getting worse? And this is the thing we talk about all the time, but like it always pretty much holds true. It's like Pareto's principle is the fancy way to say it, but it's just the 80-20 rule. Most businesses, brokerages, trucking companies, pharmaceutical companies, literally any company in any industry typically makes 80% of their profit from 20% of their customers, right? So when you look at that and you just see all the customers lined up, like I always take what is the total profit for the whole brokerage all year, and then I divide out as a percentage what each account contributed to it, right? So like on this account, maybe it was just in the spring we made a bunch of money and they're seasonal, but we made 300 grand. This account we made $1 million. This account we made 50,000. I divide out the total profit for the whole year by each account. And I'm like, this is each one of these accounts percentage of the total profit, right?
Yep.
And you get to see this real quick, and you're just like, wait a minute, you got 160 clients, and 90% of your profit came from 10 of them. So there was 110 other accounts that made up 10% of the total money you made. Because now you start to really understand, like, where's our time going? Who do we have supporting what? And the other thing that's really helpful to understand is, okay, what do the most profitable companies have in common? And how do you go get more of them? Because that's the information you want to get to your sales folks and go, listen, these are the accounts that we do the best on. What do these things have in common? How do we get more of this? And then you show them these are the least profitable ones. What do they have in common? And because ultimately, once you do that, I can now work with the sales. I'm literally doing this with one of our clients right now. And I work with the sales guys and I go, okay, how long did it take you to learn that these accounts that made you no money weren't going to make you money? Oh, 45 days. Well, what did you learn about them? Well, they said this, or the way they do business, I just realized they're always going to go with the cheapest company and they don't care. Okay, because if you can figure that out after they're a customer, then I ask, what questions might you ask a prospect that you're not doing business with that can tell you, are they more like the companies at the bottom of the list or at the top of the list? Because ultimately, that information helps you have better sales calls. It's just identifying what you really want to do more of and what you want to do less of, and what would you want to ask a company as you're talking to them. It's never going to be perfect, but like, what questions would help you understand that you're spending a lot of time trying to get a new customer that is very much like your terrible, shitty customers that don't pay you? And what questions could you ask to find out that this company you're calling is very much like these top 10 customers where you make the bulk of your profit?
Yeah, you can even get more granular too. Like I've done it, and I usually do this in like a one-on-one format if somebody wants it. But if, like, I had a team earlier this year, one of our groups, that, you know, we saw some like stagnant numbers, even a little decline, and we just did a meeting to talk about, you know, the girl that runs the team. Her whole thing was, hey, can we do like a sales training with my team? And I said, sure. You know, she just thought, hey, let's look at different ways techniques to improve our sales skills and whatnot. But what we started to do is not just customers, but like even specific lanes. Like we could pull a certain customer that has like an eyesore low margin, and we look at it and we're like, hey, this lane right here is actually really good. It's this lane over here that you guys are consistently losing money on. And as you get to the end of the year and it's time to start doing bids again, right? I mean, we're in that season right now. A lot of the stuff is already due. But if you're going to do like a quarterly or a monthly, these things, you got to look at them, you know, periodically as, did I bid too low? Or is my carrier network in that area, is it not reliable? Or maybe do I have to revisit what my carrier qualification rules are? Because maybe the carriers that might be a better fit for this, I've excluded from being able to use because of some rule that I set, you know, a year ago that maybe I don't want to have there anymore. So like I had a guy yesterday that was like, you know, we have, you know, a rule that we have is how long has the carrier had their authority for, right? And we'll override for it. But we had a discussion about, like, just because a carrier, let's say, has only had their authority for 3 months, doesn't mean you should never use that carrier, because there might be a situation where they drove for 20 years as a company driver and decided to go be an owner operator, right? And they're a reliable, you know, multi-million mile safe driver. Or maybe it's going to be something related to safety, or it's going to be related to fraud. And because you've identified ways to mitigate risk, you can then open up those rules as long as you're following certain procedures and protocols. So, you know, it could be the carrier base that you're dealing with. It could be negotiation skills. It could just be a certain lane that you're not strong in because your existing carrier network just isn't developed there, and you're dealing with just posting on the load boards and, you know, trying to get any guy or gal out there to hop on your load. Or I've seen one where in a certain lane, they had a high percentage of fall-offs late in the week that required them to then recover a new carrier at a higher rate on a Friday, and they almost always lost money on it. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, maybe you should be having a conversation with your customer about, the way that this is being, either the pricing on it or the time frame in which this is happening, or you got to get to the bottom of why a certain thing is happening. Another thing I've done, go ahead, what do you got?
I want to just, I'm going to kind of like, I guess, reiterate what you said, but there's another way I also kind of look for those things, right? The other thing I'll do, and I usually do this pretty frequently, like monthly, I pull out every single load that was run and I throw it into a spreadsheet and I just sort them by GP from lowest to highest because you're going to lose money on some loads. Like that's just part of brokerage, right?
Yep.
Which I don't think a
You
lot
hope
of
they're
carriers
one-offs.
for somebody understands. Correct. But what I'll do is I'll just go and I just take every single load and very simple info, right? What did you bill? What did you pay? How much did you make, right? And then every load it gets sorted. So it's your biggest loss to your biggest win. And then what I'll do is like, I'll start to look and I first try to figure out what is the percentage of loads where we lost money versus made money. Not in dollars, but like just number of loads, right? And I look to see like where does that get split, right? If you moved 100 loads, 20 of them were either break even or you lost money and 80 of them were profitable. So 20% of those loads you kind of wouldn't have wanted to move in hindsight, right? The next thing I do is I look at that number based on the number I was saying earlier is like, what is our actual break even to move freight? Oh, it's $50 for this brokerage. So then I look at how many of those loads of that 100 all month did we make $50 or lose money and down? And I'm like, oh, that number's like 40. So you're like, okay, we really only made money on 60% of the freight we moved. 40% of them, if you could go back in time, you wouldn't have taken. You would have said like, I don't want to move this. It's not the right rate. Or you would have bid higher to get that load. Now that's really helpful because then what I look for in the losses is, are there any things that are like patterns? Are they all with one customer? Are they all the same lane? I'll look at, are they all the same days of the week, like you said? Because how I get to where you just said is, this is where I start. And every month I go through this and look for this and go like, okay, why are we losing this much on all these loads? Oh, look, they're all coming out of the Southeast. Oh, and then I'll put in Excel, like the day of the week, not the date, so you can reformat. I'm like, oh, look, everything out of the Southeast on a Tuesday, we lost money on all month. Okay, now we can get that information to the sales guys and be like, hey, when you're talking to your customer, I know you don't always know when the load's going to go, but you can now have a better conversation with your customer and say, hey, look, if you can get this load to pick up on Monday or Wednesday, I can do this rate. But if you got to move it on a Tuesday, it looks like the market is absolutely way tighter on Tuesday out of Georgia. I'm going to need a little more because now you can work back and forth with your shipper to make money on that without actually just charging your customer more, right? Yep. Hey, can we just load this on a Monday or Friday? And then you really start to see like, it's hard to remember this in the midst of doing it all day. But when you put all this in one place and you just look at it on a spreadsheet, like these patterns like jump out at you, right? So then like I'll just color code them like, hey, every one of these customers is in yellow. Every one of these is in green. And you just see like, oh, wow, all of my losses are all green. They're clearly all related to this customer. And then you can go talk to the sales rep. I'm like, hey, what's going on here? So this is how you can kind of go from high level down to drill down into things that are like executable and actionable to see like sometimes there's nothing you can do about why that occurred. But sometimes you can see something that is like literally jumps out at you. Like you said, like we are always losing money on this customer every Thursday and every Friday, every week. What's going on here? What is your customer telling you? How are we working with our customer in this scenario related to this type of business?
Yeah, and it brings up like two other areas that, we a lot of times at the end of the year, we talk about like, numbers and planning for the next year, like on the, money coming inside. Two other points to look at is where's money going out and what are some of the processes that we may want to tweak moving forward. So like, the money going out piece, right? This could be because you kind of talked about like what's your average cost per load for overhead and whatnot, like $85 or whatever. So things like, do you have duplication of technology in an area that you don't need anymore. So, for example, are you, and this is more like at my level, right? Like looking at managing teams, we do an audit on like the user level license for certain things that we pay per head. So like, is this team of 6, right? Is every person on that team truly using the things that we're paying for, or is there a way to sharpen the fence a little bit and clean it up? So like classic example is load boards. So, this team is 6, I'll just make this up, right? Let's say this team is 6. Every person has a TMS license, an email license, a DAT account, a truck stop account, and fill in the blank on everything else, right? Like tracking, compliance, things like that. And then you dig into it and you're like, well, really there's only 2 of them that are using the load boards, and they're really not even using truck stop. They're primarily on DAT. That's their preference. That's what they're used to using. And then you realize like we just wasted thousands of dollars this year for something that we didn't even need, right? Or
Yes.
It could be that maybe you're leaving business and opportunity on the table because you're not using certain technology. Like, for example, there are so many good sourcing tools out there. Like GenLogs is a great example, right? We were talking with somebody yesterday about GenLogs and all that it can do. And it's one of those things where, like, if you don't have the data and the market intelligence to know what's out there and what's available for certain carrier capacity, you might be overpaying for certain trucks, right? In certain lanes in certain times of the week or year or whatnot. So having some level of review on your tech stack can be, whether it's, hey, we need to shift gears on this tool that we're using, or we need to cut some of this tool, or we want to add this tool because it's going to help our productivity. These are all things that you should be looking at, because if you just, if you just add a tool and then you add another tool and then you add another tool and you never like really go back and review it, you're going to have these expenses that are not necessary. So like, are you sitting on hundreds of thousands in old, uncollected invoices, 2, 3, even 4 years old? Don't write them off. You could be losing big money right now. Meet Christina Belival, Texas's #1 freight debt collection attorney. She's recovered over $20 million across 1,700 cases using legal muscle that forces deadbeats to pay you, usually within 30 to 90 days. She's the powerhouse behind some of Texas's biggest carrier and factoring companies. There's no fees until she collects. Your competitors are already calling for their free account review. Don't let another day of your money slip away. If you've got a claim in Texas, visit freightcollectionsolutions.com or call 346-525-2229. Call now before the deadbeats disappear with your cash forever.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads and trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They have the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the country. You'll get real-time rates on every lane so you know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Plus, you get instant access to top bids from qualified carriers around the country. Get 10% off your first year of DAT1 when you visit the link in the show notes.
So bulk loads is a great example, and we love Jared. We've had him on the show, but I'll just use him for his product, for example, since it's a very good niche load board if you're in the bulk space. Let's say you have a broker or had a broker that used bulk loads and is no longer with your company or doesn't do that business anymore, right? And you're paying for a subscription to a service that you don't need. Or let's say on the other side, you have somebody that is doing bulk freight, but they aren't using a product like bulk loads to help them get access to that capacity. These are the changes you could look at in certain tech things. And another one, a great example, like tracking. I remember going through a transition from one tracking tool to another. And so we went from MacroPoint to Trucker Tools, and then we realized like we're paying for 2. And then another one right now is like we've spent a lot of money with Trucker Tools trying to track every load, but we're also spending money on Highway's Load Lock Plus for their ELD tracking. And it's like, is there a duplication of efforts here? Is there a way to make some fine-tune adjustments to have what we need access to, but only to the level that we need access to it, right? Are we overspending on a product or service that we truly don't need and don't get the usage out of? So those are just some of the little things right there that you can make tweaks on, because tech can get very expensive. But if you don't pay attention to what you're spending on, it just starts to snowball.
Two things, right? One is, I think it's really important to review this like way more than annually. What you're spending every month, I think you should be looking at it for sure every month. And I think you
Balance
should,
sheets, income statements, profit and loss statements, all of that, general ledger even.
yeah. But I even just want to keep it real simple on just like paying for stuff, meaning like software is mostly in our industry, right? And I think you need to look at that every month. And what's really helpful for me is I have a note tab with all of those for every client I work with. And what I have is not just what they're paying, but why they bought it and what they intended to use it for. Because that's what you kind of lose track with over time, and you just get used to paying it and you just kind of don't even remember why you bought it in some instances, right? And your business changes and the customers you work with change, right? So like I've done this and I've gone through and I'm like, well, hey, we bought this for this reason in this customer in January. We haven't worked with that customer since February. Is anybody using this tool? And then you'll realize like, nobody realized they still had it and nobody's using it. Like, okay, well, that's $700 a month. We can probably cancel that, right?
Yep.
Another one is even just insurance, right?
Yeah, insurance is a big one. Yeah.
What you don't realize, and this is something that kind of surprised me, I guess, is every time you add like a customer specific rider to your insurance, where like one customer says, hey, I need 250 grand in contingent cargo and I need $1 million in auto contingent liability for you to work with us. So you'll go to your insurance company, they will add customer specific, meaning like that insurance is applicable to that customer and that customer only. Those are like riders, right? But when you're doing this throughout the year, you add them and you keep adding them. And then what happens is at renewal, they just renew all of them. And then I've gone through those and audited them with an insurance company. I did this recently. I was like, well, hey, how many riders do we have with how many customers? And they were like, well, we don't really know. Like we don't keep track of it. I was like, you don't know how many we've added? And they're like, no, because I wanted to compare it to how many of those companies are still active customers, because the business added some and lost some. And I'm like, I know one or two of these needed a rider because I know what they move. So like there's for sure at least two in there we can get rid of. So what I ended up doing with this one client is I'm like, okay, get rid of all of them. Drop all the insurance back down with none of these riders. And then as our insurance get renewed, our customers are going to email us and say, hey, we got your new insurance cert. It looks like the coverage isn't correct. Can you add it? So I literally got rid of all of them. I dropped one company's insurance from like $24,000 a year to 12 grand. And then we had to add like 2 or 3 riders that week. And it ended up being like 3 grand. So instead of us paying $24,000 just by auditing which customers were even active and inactive, I cut their insurance bill in half, right? And the same thing is like what you said is tech is like a lot of tech has a lot of promises that are fulfilled or aren't. And I think we don't spend enough time going through that, at the very least monthly or quarterly, going, hey, we bought this because everybody wanted to use this. Is anyone still using it? And you will find out in so many cases that like people, one, have forgotten you've bought it and just aren't using it because they don't remember. And they're like, oh shit, like I forgot we had that. And then they start using it. And some you'll hear people like, yeah, it doesn't work at all. And you're like, okay, well guys, why don't you tell me that? Like we've been paying for it for 3 months. You guys asked for it. Nobody likes it. And nobody thought to say, hey, we don't need to use this thing anymore, because they're not paying the bill. So they just kind of don't log in. And you realize like, we just spent $2,100 in the past 2 months on something nobody is using and doesn't work at all, right? Or at least doesn't work the way it needed to.
Yeah, think about prospecting tools too. Like those can really add up, right?
So
you're talking
quick.
like your Zoom infos, your LinkedIn Sales Navigator,
Zoom info, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and even just features in HubSpot, for example. Like I've seen HubSpot bills as low as like $40 a seat and as high as I think like $150 a seat. And
I've
seen
I had
companies,
one in a previous company where I think we were spending, it was like 4 or 5 grand a month because we had every bell and whistle for like marketing and like,
correct.
And it was like crap that we didn't
one's using.
Need half of it.
Yeah. And like, that's the other thing is like, you might have had the best intentions and like, hey, we'll get more business. This is worth it. But then what you realize, if you don't review this and talk to your salespeople and go, hey, how's that tool going? How are you guys using it? Where is it beneficial? Where did it work out? Where isn't it? Or where is it falling short? I've seen so many of them where people are like, dude, you are paying, like you said, $400 a month per seat per person for a tool. And you're like, once I talk to everybody, I'm like, they're all only using basic features. Like we could literally drop that number to $50 per person from 500 just by finding out like what are people actually using this for. I did this with a client once. They had all the email automation with all the email sequences to do all of this fancy stuff. But when I sat with all of them to see how they were doing this, they were manually going into HubSpot, writing an email, and then pressing send. I was like, well, you guys aren't using the sequence. They're like, no. And what we found out was they were like, it takes longer to write the sequence than it was to do it manually. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, like that makes sense. Do it however you want, but we certainly don't need to pay for all this automation because nobody wants to use it. They would rather do it this other way. And like, again, there's always going to be something or some fire you got to put out. So like you've got to, as a manager or a business owner, like literally I would suggest put something on your calendar for like the first Friday of every month, because the month end usually gets a little busy with customers, and just so it literally reminds you whatever day of the week you tend to be free every single month, and just put notes in your calendar of like, hey, I need to review my P&L. I got to review what we're doing and spending on which tech stack. Because the last thing I think we need to cover on here is like the other big bucket on review from like an ownership standpoint is, what does everybody look like in two very simple categories? Are they showing up to work on time? Are they staying until the day's over? And are they doing what volume of work while they're there? Not even qualitative, right? Just like if you got a whole bunch of dispatchers, okay, can you pull a report to see that everybody's showing up on time and leaving at the same time or staying late? And then what is the call numbers? Like not even just outbound versus inbound, just like total number of phone calls each person is handling on average per day over a month, right? I've gone into companies where like they have, from my opinion, twice what they need. And then I'm like, hey, pull all the call reports for the past month, and I just want to divide it by the number of work days. And you're like, you've got 25% of your people making the equivalent of 8 phone calls a day.
Yeah.
What are they doing all day? And then the owners will be like, I don't know. I didn't ask.
You can even do this on a back office or administrative level too. Like we had somebody in the past that we realized, and they were in an administrative role and they were in a different office. And we realized like from somebody making a comment that like they just kind of played on their phone all day long. And we very quickly like did some digging and realized we did like, all right, well, how many instances of XYZ is this person doing in a day compared to the other people in that same role? Like it could be someone in carrier compliance doing a carrier approval. It could be someone in credit doing a credit check. It could be someone in billing doing an invoice, or somebody, any one of those roles, right? And then I would be willing to bet you'll uncover that you probably have people in seats that you will want to either shuffle around and make it more efficient,
different role,
reallocate
right,
to revenue producing, or it could be, layoffs are never a great thing, but like that's the reality of the market we're in right now. If you're shrinking or you have some kind of turnover in business.
You said something I want you to go back to before you go past that, because it was really important. And I think this is one of the easiest, simplest ways to do this for any company is you take everybody's activity, and it doesn't matter what the role is. Just think about whatever the task is. If it's dispatch, just start with total calls and call time. If it's sales, same thing. Total calls. How many calls are you answering and making outbound and average talk time, right? Do that for the whole group. And then like you said, because the thing you said that I wanted to repeat for everybody is just look at the bottom and the top, and then just ask yourself, is there a reason somebody is doing 4 times the amount of work in the same job as this person? Because then the next question is, do they need training? Do they not know what they're doing? Do they not have enough work to do? Like there's a lot of reasons why that could be true. But what you said, I think is so important, because I do this with everyone. I don't say and come in and say, this is what you should be doing. I just look at their whole group and I ask the people at the bottom, well, what are the people at the top doing differently than you? And then they'll be like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, here, just looking at activity, this person averages 120 phone calls in and out. You averaged 15 over a month. Like not over 2 days,
Yeah.
not over a week, over an entire month. So like, are people not giving you the things you need to do? Are you not like, just help me understand the difference between this person in the same job and you? Because now it's
Yeah.
not subjective. It is not my opinion. This is your coworker sitting right next to you doing the same job. How is this person doing 5 times the amount of work you are over a month? Like that is not like a
My old
small
boss-
instance.
Yeah, my old boss used to do every day on our team the talk time, and like it was literally like the whole call report would get sent out every morning.
I love that.
And it was like it kind of felt weird at first, but I was like, it holds everyone accountable, and it kind of like
Everybody.
gives you perspective to where you sit compared to everybody else, right? So like
Correct.
every call, how long it was. So then you have a total of like this person made 43 calls for a total talk time of 2 hours and 52 minutes, right? And then this person made 4 calls and had talk time of 3 minutes, right? Because they just got 4 voicemails. Or but I like having the volume and like the number of calls and the talk time. Because
Correct.
there was days when like I only had 8 calls, but I had like 3 really good
45
long
minutes
ones that were
apiece.
on there, right? And maybe you're on the phone for 3 hours. So
And here's the other thing too, right? Like the thing that's really important about this is like I can go into almost any sales business, any business that has sales role, right? And I can go, how do we do business? And if it is over the phone, I can take that report over a quarter and I can usually see it in a week, but definitely in a month. And then I can look at, if I didn't see the names, and I can look at who's making how much money and how much loads they're moving. Every single time, the person with the least amount of activity and the least call time is on the least amount making money and has the least commission. The person who's making the most always has the most activity. And like I've seen this like in huge companies. Like you literally could do the same thing with 5,000 employees and you will see that the guys at the top and girls at the top always, they're just doing more. And everyone, like, yeah, there's lots of things that can help you close customers faster, quote better. Like there's lots of things we talk about on the show for years that can help you improve. But like there's only so much you're going to improve if you're not showing up to work, or you're showing up to work and not doing anything. Like you could be a genius and the best sales guy in the world, but if you make 2 phone calls a day, you are not going to get any sales. And you could be the worst. And if you do 100 a day or 150, you will outpace that guy that is better just because you showed up and you just did more things.
yeah, there's a one of the things that we implemented, which has been very helpful, is we built out a help desk in the last like year and a half for all of our requests that come through from our brokers. So it doesn't matter if you're a W-2 sitting at the office or you're a 1099 agent that's remote. If you have let's say a credit request or a COI for a customer request or a carrier override request or whatever, right? And they go in and they basically fill out a quick little form and it emails the right person, but it's tracking the volume of, I can see every single request that goes through. So if for example, if we're trying to evaluate if we need to hire another back office rep or if we need to reallocate somebody because their plate's not full, we have the data. And if you don't have that data and you're in leadership, all you can do is like ask somebody like, hey, like how busy have you been? And like
That's the worst.
Very unlikely is
way.
someone going to tell you like, oh yeah, I just don't really have much work to do. They're gonna justify why they should have their job, right? So those
Correct.
things are really important. It's not just the sales reps; it's the other people in your office. So
it's everything. And the reason that I even explained it kind of the way in my head, and I think the way this conversation went, is how we do this, right? Is like, I don't start by going, how much do you have to do and how busy are you? Because like most people for sure, like they don't necessarily know if they need help in some things because they don't know how someone else is doing it. Like there's just so much subjectiveness. So I start with the numbers and then I fill in the things that I don't understand with those questions. Just like in that example, okay, this person has the same job over a quarter. They're averaging 90 calls a day and an hour and a half of talk time. You're averaging 25 in 5 to 10 minutes of talk time. Then the questions are, help me bridge this gap. Just like, help me understand what you need help with. Do you not have access to leads? Are the tools not working? Help me understand what is different between the two of you and your 2 jobs. Are you doing different things? Are you going at different customers? Maybe you're literally leaving the office and driving around to go meet people in person while this person's making phone calls. Like, I don't know why they're different, but help me understand why they're different. Because those are the answers and the questions you ask that help you actually understand what is actually happening there, right?
Yeah.
Because I've seen this, and especially in remote work, like it's really hard to know what's happening when everybody's working from home. And like I've gone so far with some clients as like we've gotten software where you could literally see what people are doing all day. You could set up alerts. Most big corporations all have this where they're showing when someone checks in, when they check out, when they leave for lunch break, and what is the share of the pie of what they're doing all day. It'll be like, hey, 80% of this person's day is sending emails. They answered this many phone calls. They were in this software most of the time. And like when I've done this, I'm like, I have been always shocked at what I thought was happening talking to people and in the numbers, and then saw what was actually there as if I was sitting next to them all day. I'm like, oh, there's giant gaps in here. And some of them were just training things. Like we found out that like somebody was building loads in your example. So you have a load builder. Say you have 3 of them, right? One person's building 80 loads a day and one person is building 20. Now, the assumption is one's working harder or more. But like I've gone in and asked those open-ended questions, and I found the person building 20 loads a day wasn't using like the template feature where it builds 90% of the load the same way over and over again, and they just add a couple details. And as soon as I was like, well, hey, did you know this feature existed? They were like, I didn't know that. And then the next day they're building as many loads as the other person. Yep. So it's not always, are they working? Yeah. But it's just like, are you doing the job the same way as the guy who's getting more done? And is there anything he can tell both of us that would help you get more done? And sometimes they get more work done with less effort, which is ultimately the goal with all of it, right? Like it's not always just because these numbers are different, this person is lazy or not doing what they're supposed to. Sometimes like there just might have been a gap in their training, or like they just didn't catch something, or they just got a habit of doing it one way and then they just continue doing it that way without understanding or anyone being able to sit next to them and go, oh, hey, let me just show you how you can do what you're doing in like 10% of the time, just using the tool differently, which is our job when we come in, or for a manager.
Yeah, the organization piece is like is a big thing for me when I see somebody who feels it's like visibly and audibly like stressed and overwhelmed. And then we just kind of analyze like, how are you doing this? And then you realize like their email inbox is a disaster. They're not using a calendar or a to-do list, or like, it's like just having some tweaks to processes can drastically improve stuff. So yeah, recapping here, take a look at, not just the numbers and the activity that goes into growing it, but also like procedural changes. Where are you spending money, or what tools maybe do you need or not need anymore? This stuff will all go into helping you have a better future year than where you're at now, hopefully, if you do it properly. So I can't stress enough that like if you don't analyze where you're at and where you're trying to go, you're just kind of like a tumbleweed blowing in the wind, and it's just, the market's just going to move you wherever it wants to move you if you're not being intentional about it. So you win at what you focus on, and if you're not being intentional and focusing on this stuff, you really, you're not setting yourself up for success. So anything else we missed? I mean, we can go on for hours on this stuff because there's a lot, but it just kind of the big ticket items.
I would just say like the biggest piece of advice or the biggest takeaway is most owners and managers don't do this frequently enough and wait until something bad happens to look at it. And a lot of these things and a lot of money can be saved. And every one of the things we talked about, just by doing this more frequently throughout the year, at the very least quarterly, if not monthly. Because in every one of those scenarios where I've come in, I've found some cases tens of thousands of dollars in software, tools, or people that needed to be in another role or didn't have a training. And it's like, wait, when was the last time you guys did this? And they're like, oh, 2 years ago. It's like, well, that's 10 grand a month for 24 months. You spent $240,000 in the past 2 years that you didn't need to, and you got nothing in return for. Yep. What would you do with an extra $250,000, right? Like, and that's just not even a huge example. Like, there are so many of these things. And also, like, the more frequently you do it, the better you get at it and the faster you can do it, right? Like, if you do this every month or every quarter, it's not as much work. If you do it once a year, you got to remember all these things you're figuring out again. It's going to take you forever. It actually gets faster and you get better at it the more frequently you do it, and the more of these things you catch much sooner before you end up spending a whole bunch of money on things you didn't need to. It's like when people look at the end of the year and they go, oh, I didn't realize I have 15 different subscriptions for streaming TVs and I use 2 of them. And oh, by the way, I've paid for them all year. And you add up all that number and you're like, I just threw all that money in the trash, right?
Yep.
Because guess what? All those streaming systems and all those things, they're all designed to keep charging you without you noticing.
Yep.
So like their business is, I hope they don't notice that they stop using the tool and will keep charging them. And then like the last thing is a lot of these softwares require a 60-day before your contract's up notification to actually cancel it. So if you're on a January 1 to January 1, a lot of these, you need to literally notify them in like November or actually in October to actually cancel the contract. And I can't tell you how many I've gotten into. I'm like, you guys aren't using this at all. Can you cancel it? And then I look at the contract, it's like, requires a 180-day notice. I'm like, you needed to tell them in June you were going to cancel this in January. So like a lot of these things are not that difficult. They're pretty simple. It's just they tend to be out of sight, out of mind until someone has to look at them. And then they find all these things and everybody's super frustrated. And it's like, the best time to always do this is just now. Like if you haven't done this, like just do it this week or do it next week, because putting it off is just, you're wasting more money in one way or another, likely, or you're not getting the growth you need.
Can't agree with you more. Good stuff. Good discussion today. Final thoughts, Ben.
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills.